you, Chairman Wicker, and thank you for holding this important hearing and having the FCC commissioners before us today. We've had 2.5 of the last years in which I think a lot of the important issues that affect consumers before the FCC have been challenged, and I would say eviscerated, as opposed to the consumer interests that have been pushed forward. Last year, more than 20 million Americans wrote asking you to protect a free and open internet, and instead, net neutrality protections for consumers were repealed. Don't worry, big cable companies will do the right thing by you. And just last week in my own state, Comcast was ordered to pay $9.1 million in fines for deceptive practices that affected 50,000 Washingtonians. And since the repeal of net neutrality, some wireless and broadband companies already appear to be testing ways to undermine the free and open internet. Wireless carriers have been accused of potentially throttling subscribers to Netflix and YouTube. CenturyLink temporarily blocked access to the internet in Utah to force consumers to watch ads. Sprint allegedly interfered with competitive Skype services using wireless networks. So these are all questions that I will definitely be following up on in our Q&A section. But time and time again, big cable companies have prioritized their bottom lines over the fair treatment of consumers and the internet economy, and we want to know that you are on the front line of consumer interests. When scientists and weather experts from outside and inside the Trump administration warned that actions on spectrum could harm forecasting, their concerns were ignored. Peer-reviewed science research has concluded that without key vapor data that could vanish due to actions on where spectrum has been allocated, that this could impact our weather forecasting. And despite the correct forecasting, if you consider what Sandy impacted hundreds of lives and caused $70 billion, getting that forecast wrong would have been deadly. I want to thank Chairman Wicker for agreeing to hold a hearing on this topic in the near future because I think it needs to be addressed in more detail. I also want to make sure that we are clear today. We are not going to allow this vital information to be jeopardized in the future. We've also heard that at a time when motor vehicle accidents claim more than 37,000 lives in the United States each year, that the FCC is pushing to open up key spectrum that jeopardizes the promise of new technologies in this particular area that could prevent as many as 80% of those accidents. So just like spectrum and its important use in transportation, weather, launch forecasting, also the chairman mentioned broadband. So we all agree that we need to make more access to internet broadband equitable to Americans. He mentioned the issue that's so important to all of us, and that is rural telemedicine. But if we've failed at the FCC to collect accurate data about who has access to broadband and we don't have the right information, how can we ever fix the problem? I know that the FCC wants to put a cap on universal service, the most successful broadband deployment in the nation's history, because they refuse to make the hard decisions about how to appropriately fund it. So I hope that we will hear about real solutions today and how we get through these challenging times and make sure that we are protecting the public interest. I know that in an information age, we're going to continue to grow and new products and services are going to be there. But we also have to make sure we are aggressive about doing our jobs and protecting that interest on behalf of the consumer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.